Okay, great. Welcome to the last episode of DevCamp, session of DevCamp, 4 hours of sleep. And then we'll start with what's on everyone's energy level right now. This is like, I have 4 cups of coffee in me, and this is, I'm barely even awake. I don't know, I'm wobbly. Okay. And then let's do, this is my focus, like cognitive ability level. Like I've got really good cognitive capacity right now. And this is like, I'm kind of like Bear right now. Where's everyone at there? Oh, I'm kind of like me right now. Okay, that sounds good. Level of embodiment. So this is like if you breathe and you feel into your body, how much like I don't know, whatever image of someone who's got like a really good connection to their body and to their physical environment. Where are you at there? This is, let's go with Bruce Lee up here, or a really skilled yogi. And then down here, we're gonna go with a professor of something unpronounceable. It's great. That's really good for a dev camp. I don't know. I'm asking good questions that aren't really relevant. Only when the camera's rolling, huh? All right, and then we'll ask some dev camp related questions. This is I made it all the way through dev camp, and this is I didn't make it all the way through dev camp. Where's everybody at? That's a pass. All right, and then we'll do I'm really curious what happens after dev camp, what the next things are, like what's going to be the support for that. And this is like, I'm not really curious. I'm already clear on what I'm doing following this. Where's everyone at on that spectrum? Okay, cool. And thank all of our team who put the dev camp together, this incredible group of volunteers who've been running dev camp, and Carolyn, who's not a volunteer, who's been supporting as well. Just thank you all so much for your participation and your holding. And there's something important that I want to share with everyone, which is, this is another check-in I want to do. This is like how like kind of discouraged you feel by how the number of people participating has gone down. Like we've only got 23 people in the room right now. We had a lot more in the beginning. This is like, I feel so great about that. Like that makes me feel excited. And this is like, I feel a little bit bummed or a little bit sad about that. And like, where's everyone at? And all answers are welcome. Where's everyone at with that? Okay, great. So this is one of the pieces I want to speak to, and it's my hope that I can get your hand a little bit higher. So we've done, this is our 8th dev camp. Every single dev camp that we've done, we've had a very significant drop off. Every single one. And early on in the dev camps, I would have had my hand down here. And something that I've learned over the last few years of playing in the Holochain community is that this is a really, really good and natural thing for where we're at right now. And I want to note, like, so like for those of you who are people who are running the dev camp, raise your hand if you were one of those last people at a previous dev camp. Like Hedayat, you were that, right? Nastasia, Lily, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it's actually really, really good. And one of the principles that we try to grow the Holochain community by is that small is really precious. There's something normal it's just normal in our society, which is broken, in our culture, which is broken, which is the more the better, the bigger the better, the faster the better. We care about scaling. We want everyone to come in and be, a part of everything as fast as possible. But that's not how really strong relationships build, and that's not how mastery builds and experience. So we've been really lucky that we've been able to grow relatively slowly and really stably with a really strong degree of relationship and a stronger degree of understanding for the people who are coming closer into the technology. There will be a time when we'll have dev camps that we have a huge number of people in, where much more people will probably be at the end of it. but the longer we can hold off on that, the better, because for most projects like this, the things that really make a difference in the world, the things that people build, that people use and play with, get made by a relatively small group of people who's really capable. And it's those people that just show up and stay and actually do the coding, do the learning, and do the participating that make things real. So I just want to acknowledge that this group has gone through a threshold of that kind of process, and thank you all for doing it. And really celebrate it, because small is beautiful and it's special, and it's like, that's where you can actually have real relationships and stuff. And it's just like the step into a new kind of beginning and something to really honor and celebrate. And like, just as an example, Art and I did a meetup in Zurich in Switzerland, and I think there was like 9 people there. Is that right, Hedayat? We had like maybe 8 or 9 people showed up to this meetup. It was tiny. And Hedayat was one of those people. And he's contributing, and this is like, there's similar stories for everyone, right? But I'm just telling the story of Hedayat, and that's where Art and I met Hedayat, where Hedayat and I met. And it was partly because of the smallness of that space that Hedayat just asked questions like the whole time, because there wasn't anyone else asking those kind of questions. He got all of his questions answered. And then he started participating in the community more and more and more and more, and then eventually started holding and volunteering. And it just like, it ends up growing that way. And you can only do some of that kind of growing when you start small. So yeah. So it works. And thank you all.
Thank you, Eric. I would like to add another one. Yeah, in that time, that meetup in Zurich, I drove and traveled from Cologne to Zurich to just see Art and Eric, to ask my question. And it was a great chance that there was not a lot of people I could ask a lot of questions. So it was a great chance. By the way, the point from me, really short. Apparently, there are some how can I say, organizer or teacher that was just giving you or transferring some knowledge. But honestly, it is more than this one. I can call it is a co-learning. All of us are learning, when we are coding the main application, when we are working together. So how we can learn from each other? It means we learn a lot together, and we learn a lot also from you, from your participation. Thank you a lot. Thanks. You join, and be aware it was not a one way of learning or education. It was bi-directions.
Oh, and I'll add, if you want to get involved or you want to participate more or play more, we'll have different things like coming up for that. I'll do raise your hand if you'd be interested in like learning about more, getting involved in the Holochain community, or maybe even participating in running the next DevCamp or anything like this. Okay, we got a few people maybe like, okay. So I'll hold a session. I'll put it out to everyone who's here today. I guess all the DevCamp participants, I'm not sure, but I kind of want to like actually focus on this group. And then if you have any questions in the meantime around any of that stuff, or if you've got a project and you don't want to wait until that meeting happens, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. Cool, thanks. All right, Sid?
Actually, Nastasia has been DMing me saying, we need to start. How do we get Bear to stop?
You can just interrupt me. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to be polite, sorry.
Do you want to go on this? And anything you want to share, Nastasia?
Well, only that I'm super excited that we are all here and we've gone through this journey with the DevCamp, and like, thank you all for being here and for all your questions. And yeah, I'm super excited for our presentations today. And our speakers worked hard to prepare those. So yeah, that's why I'm trying to start those. Sid?
Thank you. Thanks. And so we have me going first, and then Pospi, and then Josh, who's also on the call. And we're going to try and do all of it in the next 30 minutes. So I'm here speaking about the Neigborhoods project. Some of you might have heard about it. And so today's session is really just to give or everyone here, everyone who's present here, a little bit of an overview into the project, what it's about, how you can engage, um, and all of those good things. For those who've been part of DevCamp, I think by now most of you have seen how Holochain or the D-Web or the distributed web is nudging us all or nudging all development into this very modular composable direction where apps are getting you could say tinier and start slotting into each other like little Lego bricks. um, and in such an environment, in distributed environments where groups of people can pretty much spin up their own DNA to have conversations with each other, it's moving us away from the platform style architecture where for the last couple of decades we've really been meeting each other in what are known as platforms. Like I would go to Facebook to meet people or Twitter to meet people. But if we're all spinning off into our little DNAs, the question that arises and that we see arising is, well, where do people meet each other? And so neighborhoods, I would say, is an attempt to answer that question. I believe there's going to be quite a few attempts made in that direction, because this to me feels like a really very interesting problem that DWeb is going to try and solve, or Web 3.0 is going to try and solve. And so neighborhood says, instead of people meeting in platforms, could we be seeing architectures where people meet in neighborhoods? And so neighborhoods heavily leverages something known as a reputation interchange, which has been in development over the last couple of years. Like, people here on this call have seen it being developed, have contributed to its development. And so some of you might have seen it as well. But the reputation interchange really allows groups of people to articulate reputation for their systems, for their communities, and for it to be ported from one group to another. And so what neighborhoods is really saying is, let reputation data that's held in holochain ledgers, let that guide the interactions and discovery and engagements within your groups of people. And that's an interesting shift away from centralized architectures, because you don't have the comfort of massive swaths of data and someone like Zuckerberg sitting on top of that data saying, Nastasia, this should be the next in your feed. But instead, in D-Web architectures, you actually have that held locally and contextually. And so reputation data starts guiding sense making and discovery, as opposed to centralized AI that we see prevalent in Web 2.0 architectures. And so I won't dive into it too much, but I would recommend diving into some of our documentation that's published on Gitbook. Our white paper is due soon, but as you browse through Gitbook, you'll see some of this articulated very well, like what the reputation interchange is. And in essence, it's really, you can think of it like a cultural computer. That's a very crude way to think of it. So you have raw material as reputation data. And what neighborhood says is anything can be reputation data. So it could be likes and swipes and claps. It could be timestamps. It could be particulate matter in the air. It could be how many times you hosted people on your couch, or how good a host you were. It could be transaction data, like what kind of payments you made or defaults you made, or revenue you've earned. Anything can potentially serve as reputation data. And the reputation interchange basically converts that into a cognizable reputation score. So something as simple as Nastasia presents me with her timestamps, and using those timestamps, I might make a computation to say Nastasia is punctual. And maybe my definition is a binary, like punctual or not punctual. But Hedayat might look at that data, those timestamps, and say, no, not punctual. Or Hedayat might have a more fluid, a spectrum of sorts to ascertain whether Nastasia is punctual. So the reputation interchange is fundamentally a cultural computer, but because it's agent centric, we can very easily move into shared cultural computation. And so if Nastasia has a cultural computer and has computed this information, you can actually see patterns where she could share those computations with Sid. Like maybe Sid doesn't have the bandwidth to evaluate people on the basis of their timestamps. And it's just like, Nastasia, just tell me if Hedayat is punctual or not, because I trust the way you make sense of things. And so Nastasia could share her cultural computation with me. And so for the first time, we have Sid not having to make sense of the world all by himself, but he's relying on Nastasia's version of the world. And that's called a shared cultural computation. And so obviously, once you've gone from one people to two people and one node to two, that jump from two to many is not that hard. And then you start seeing registries of shared computations start to emerge, where we might all be part of a neighborhood. And in this neighborhood, maybe the purpose of our gathering is, sharing funny memes with each other, or playing chess with each other, or varied other activities. But we might have a definition for punctuality. And so as timestamps come in, there's a shared registry of who's punctual, who's not in that community. And that computation is very specific to this community, right? Like Hedayat might be in another community that figures punctuality is defined differently, and therefore might have a totally different computation of what is punctual and what is not based on the same timestamps. So this shared reputation computation is fundamentally a neighborhood. And so this to us defines what a neighborhood is, and what we're saying is, in the distributed web and holochain like architectures, this could potentially be where people meet, like the metaphorical watering holes where you come to learn and engage with other people. And obviously, we're saying Facebook is not that great a watering hole because it has skewed, it has its intentions aren't aligned with yours. You don't have complete freedom of articulating that culture, but within the neighborhood, you do. Um, and so this neighborhood becomes a place where can can you don't have to have that cognitive load of making sense of the world all by yourself. Um, and so everything from the feed of by which algos are sorted, to who's a good host, to who's, and by host I mean someone whose home you might want to stay in, who cooks good meals, who makes good music, who's good at playing a certain game. Like all of that can be a culture of a group. And so you could have networks of 50,000 people sharing memes, and all of it ordered on the basis of your reputation data. um, Now, because it's agent centric, this gets a little more exciting because you can also have cross membrane sharing. So, through something we call mimetic bridges, you could have mimetic bridges between neighborhoods. And so, Nastasia could be part of two neighborhoods. And because she's part of one, she could actually relay information to the other neighborhood, things like timestamps or likes or claps. So, she might we could have interesting situations where Nastasia shows up in Hedayat's neighborhood, and Hedayat says, "Oh, if you are popular in Sid's neighborhood, your likes or claps there are also valid here, because we have a shared sense of humor." And so from day one, Nastasia shows up in Hedayat's community as well with an accelerated um, engagement. So all of those likes that she's earned in Sid's community can potentially be ported over into this one as well. And so you have interesting, like what we're saying is, in DWeb architectures, this also makes sense for algorithms because, like we said, the pressure, like you don't actually have overarching snapshots on all your users. So you're allowing users to accelerate their engagements among themselves. And so this porting of context is very important, which is why we call it neighborhood reputation interchange. um, Part of the reputation interchange is a language for reputation. Some of you can follow it by clicking through to the GitHub repo, but essentially allows communities to design their reputation systems, but then not the actual computations, the formulae aren't held in the DNA or Holochain apps. They're held outside the Holochain app. So you can actually constantly pivot and tweak your reputation score on a very fluid, almost hourly basis, if you like, because you don't have to update the holochain DNA every time. You actually simply change the formula, and the plugin into the holochain DNA allows for that score to be logged in the holochain DNA. So this is something, if you are a developer, like, we would recommend thinking through some of these things, because you might be thinking about creating a chat app or a chess app. And one of the problems you might run into is you want to give your groups or people the freedom to say, hey, this is what we think is a good chess player. And the next day they might want to change it, but to be able to do it without actually updating the entire app or the entire DNA every time. Nastasia, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so the reputation interchange with the replang forms a key part of neighborhoods. Um, and a big piece of neighborhoods is also something we call a low code marketplace, which facilitates developers who want to create these very composable generic tools that communities could use. It allows them to provide this for neighborhoods, and neighborhoods also provides an accounting system through which communities can actually um, what's the word, compensate or reward developers for creating these tools. So you could have neighborhoods with everything from chat to peer-to-peer lending to sharing of memes to couch surfing, all embedded within the neighborhoods. And so you have these interesting architectures where you might have dating within a neighborhood. So so you can actually find people within a neighborhood, as opposed to going to a third party app like Tinder that that imposes its generic culture on you when you're trying to engage with people. um, I will leave it at that. There's a whole bunch of stuff on credits and our tokens. But in any case, I think this is more just an invitation to go check out some of our documentation and to ask more questions at a later date. 11 minutes, I think.
Yeah, something like this. Do you have any questions for Sid and his presentation?
Cool. Yeah, just unmute yourselves, I guess.
Okay, so I was wondering, Sid, I mean, the neighborhood seems like a very interesting framework that you guys are working on.
Thank you.
How would it work together with other projects like the value flows and stuff that others are working on? Because there's also this idea that should be some kind of compository or
Yeah.
something, but you could combine all these things into one working framework.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. And I think part of like working in the Holochain ecosystem has been like cross collaborating with other projects. And so Pospi, who you're going to hear right after me, will be talking about REA and value flows. And so Pospi has actually been a strong contributor to neighborhoods with these architectures. And so the intention is for these tools, like let's say you have a market exchange tool or resource sharing tool embedded within the neighborhood, which might be based on REA accounting or value flows. Ideally, these tools wouldn't impose their cultural systems onto a community. And so you could have a very generic peer-to-peer lending tool which allows for exchanges and loans to be dispersed, but doesn't define what is a good person to loan to. And so communities can actually embed that tool within their membrane, and the community defines Guillaume is a trustworthy person, or Otis is not, and so on. Like, and you could see interesting definitions, like gamer communities might say, hey, you're a valid member of our community, we think you're trustworthy, whereas a bank may not. And so that's the crux. Like, and so what we're really nudging more and more developers towards is to create those generic composable modular tools that can plug into communities. And so we have a little tagline which says specific culture and generic tools. That's neighborhood. So if you're building a chess app or a chat app and you want it to be compatible with neighborhoods, like that's a conversation we're having. But what we're saying to developers is let communities define who is a good chess player and how they meet people, as opposed to you trying to define all of that, which is a habit we have from, the last 15 years of platform-based architectures. But yeah, a big part of our work over the next few months will be these kinds of conversations and hackalongs and dev camps and helping people understand what the neighborhoods architecture is about.
Pospi, are you ready?
Is it me now?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Thanks, Nastasia. Yeah. Hi from Australia. Nice to drop in on y'all. So I'm here to talk about HREA a little bit, and yeah, some contextualizing is interesting with this. It comes out different every time. So HREA is an answer to the question of what does an economic system look like on the holochain that has no economic system. So again, there's many possible answers to this question. The reason that some of us think that Holo-REA is a pretty good answer to that is because of a protocol called value flows, which I'll paste in the chat along with other links as I talk. And as you see on the value flows homepage, it is a vocabulary for the distributed economic networks of the next economy. And what that means to me is that in our current economy, we have a system that focuses entirely on debits and credits. And the things that we kind of ignore and get left out are like ingredients. You don't really see those except for the label on things sometimes, and we don't have any real understanding of where they come from. So this is about having an economic system that brings ingredients back into kind of the forefront and makes them an important part of the economy, something that we can reason about and make sense of. And so what it means is that value flows and systems built on it are really useful for deploying any kind of, not just economic system, but coordination system, because there are things we can do that aren't economic, but they are about the creation of resources. So, like the things that we've been working on in this DevCamp, that's work that we're doing together, and that can exist as a resource, even though it's not a real tangible resource, it's still a resource. And value flows can also be used to track skills and all kinds of things. There's a really neat story, this one, that my collaborator Lynn put together, which is a story about Pi to kind of explain value flows and give you a bit of a 101 on how it works. And there's something kind of bigger in that, because there is a broader vision here that if we can start making an economy that's more grounded in what's actually real, that we can start shifting people to care more about the reality of our world and be more integrated with each other and our interactions with each other. I should probably put a link to Holo-REA in the chat too. So you can jump in and download the code and clone it and build it. It all compiles. And we've had a few collaborators over the last couple of years, but none recently because it's been in this like crazy state of being heavily rewritten for a long time. But that's over now and it's all running on RSM. There's a bit over half of the test suite is passing now, and most of the things left to fix are just the tests more than the code itself. It's also worth mentioning Bonfire, which I put a link into, which is another system being built to the Value Flows protocol, but it's a normal web system. It's built using Elixir frameworks. And there are a couple of apps out there people are building now that aim to be compatible with both systems. And so we're sort of building in the direction of trying to have multi-platform capable economies where people aren't locked into any particular tech, and you can start to share and move resources between different networks and different tech stacks and things seamlessly. And to help with this process, there is also this module, which is a GraphQL client that you can literally just plug into an app and it will mock up value flows back in for you, so you can start building UI applications without needing to set up Holochain or do anything. So that can be handy for rapid development if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in. There's some other interesting projects in the works at the application layer. This one, Organize, is one that a collaborator by the name of Raphael is mostly focused on at the moment. And he's actually building that as a prototype for the New York Textile Lab. Some of you, I'm sure, would have seen their Holochain ecosystem session. It's a really cool one. It's worth a watch. Yeah, and there's also, I don't have a link for it, but some like kind of more crazy advanced like spatial visual interface work going on there. I'll post an issue thread into some of the value flows conversations where we've been talking about spatial interfaces. There is a lot of room for design effort in this as well. In fact, design, I think, is kind of one of the bigger things that value flows has missed out on in the past. So if you've got designer friends, let them know. Another app that needs some love and is kind of like most of the way through to completion is this one, which is like a white labelable exchange marketplace type app. For those that are familiar with Hilo, it's kind of like Hilo's offers requests functionality. But this thing, because it's based on value flows, it can do all your accounting and tax for you as you do stuff in that marketplace. And there are some groups, I should probably put my email address in the chat. There are some groups that I can connect people with if they're interested who are looking for development on, and developers, I should say, on various things. Sensorica is probably the most well-known of those. They are also the originators of all of this stuff. So there's a system called NRP, which was kind of Holo-REA version 1 way back when. And so there's sort of like a lineage of software there and people interested in doing more stuff. For those that have heard of the DISCO project, it stands for Distributed Cooperatives. They're also a bunch of folks who are interested in doing stuff, mostly around value accounting, which is one application of this. So once you've got the system that can track all your resources, then you can start to do things to figure out like what contributions are worth and how people should be rewarded. And that's been something that Sensorica have been big on in the past. I would also really recommend reaching out to Guillaume, and if you all know Victor Zonders, so one of his projects, Microgreens, are looking at inventory management stuff built on REA. There's also Guillaume Ashiro. Still, they're not really actively developing anymore, are they? But I think logistics software is another kind of gap that people are interested in filling using value flow systems.
Yeah, it's they will definitely get back to that terrain. Oh, sorry about that. So not right now, but definitely in the long-term future.
Very cool. So yeah, so that's UI applications, and you know, I guess the only thing really left to say about that is if you're looking at building some platform that does something economic and other things, to also think of value flows, because to also think of Holo-REA, I should say, because HREA has been built from the start with this goal that Sid's been talking about of hypermodularity in mind. And so there's like a lot of work put into, and you've probably seen multi-DNA apps before, where it's kind of like you clone a DNA to make a new instance of the application and you use that as a collaboration space. But there's a different question when you're talking about how can I have multiple collaboration spaces that actually talk to each other and data is linked between them in all kinds of ways. And there's actually a test inside the test folder in HREA. You'll find a folder called Social Architectures, which I haven't updated the tests for RSM yet, but there's an outline in there of what a multi-network setup looks like, where there's kind of like different groups of people with different access to different things. There is a lot of other work needed with this, a lot of it in parallel, some of it infrastructural. So depending on your interests, there's many ways you could contribute if you're interested. Shout outs to Lightning Rod Labs and the WE project, which I don't know if Guillaume's been talking about that in these chats or not, but not so much. So there's a need in REA networks and in networks in general to have a way to deal with like groups of people and make them have, you know, agency and autonomy of their own. And so WE has kind of been a project where people are starting to investigate that. And there's a couple of other modules in the open dev stack that that one is one that I've contributed a while back, which could be useful with WE. That's a module where basically anyone who touches the DNA gets automatically registered and can be discovered. And there's even some older modules like this that the ICE team, I think, developed originally, because there's the the gap there of, you know, once you have a group of people, who has what role within that group and how does that access change and that kind of thing. So there's a whole body of work there that's really fresh and interesting. The REA specific things, the value flows specific things, sorry, I've thrown too many acronyms at you all there. REA accounting being the accounting model that value flows is based on. And so there's some other big-ish components in the HREA suite that are fertile ground ready for development. One is recipes, which is about being able to have kind of blueprints for how to produce certain things and do certain work, and then being able to just click a button and go, I want to, you know, I don't know, set a garden and put food in it today, and deploy that as a production plan that people can follow. There's also tracking and tracing functionality, being able to follow supply chains through and figure out where resources are coming from and going to.
Yeah, so my name's Josh. I'm from the UK. This is my dog. He doesn't do any development work, unfortunately. Let's see. So, yeah, we're Flux. We used to be, well, we still are Junto, but now we've kind of rebranded as Flux with a new kind of product idea. I don't know if you've been following Junto, but we launched a centralized application a couple years ago. And then since the learnings from that, we started the new kind of design and the new direction. So what is it? It's initially tailored for Web3 people looking for a place to hold the community, collaboration and experience. So everything you expect from a traditional app like Slack or Discord. But obviously with the Holochain aspect and the distributed aspect, so really empowering people or communities to own their data and their experience and direct that. We also want to make it easy for communities to host their own pages, like their own logging pages. And ideally this would be Holo hosted. So you'd have an easy way to post into a DNA. And this would be hosted in Holo and then accessible by the web. Yeah, one of the things we're working on now, which I'm super excited about, is integration with existing Web3 infrastructures like NFTs and ERC20s. So yeah, doing stuff like, you know, being able to control the access to a community, maybe based on a certain token ownership or NFT or something like that. I mean, this is a very rudimentary form of kind of membrane rules and you know, interface into the community, but it's I think a start. Community established interfaces, so communities actually being able to decide their own UI, actually being able to choose how their interface looks, and then kind of upload this UI package to the DNA, and then people who join the DNA can download it and then interface with the community as they decide that people should. And then just a general knowledge base for community events and documents and that kind of thing. So kind of like Notion, but this is a little bit further down the line. So before we go further, I'll just jump in with a demo. So we have a working kind of MVP at the moment, mostly working. Still some problems with like performance and Holochain and bundling and that kind of thing. But this is a community that someone in our Discord or in the Flux community created. You can see it's kind of looking like your average Discord or Slack clone, which is right now the goal. We just want to get the basic structure working and then add, you know, kind of the more special features and Web3 distributed features over the top. So this is working. It's a bit slow, but we have some fun stuff like different themes, like a 90s theme, which I'm quite excited about. Cyberpunk theme, black theme, this kind of thing. So this is like the first kind of stepping stones into really being able to like control your interface and your experience. So yeah, if anyone wants to try it, you can go to our GitHub, which I'll share at the end, and you can give this a go. So the tech stack is Holochain, Atom, which I'll talk a little bit about, which is like up and coming ontology or design for distributed applications, and then IPFS and Electron, and possibly more soon. Okay, so yeah, Atom. What is Atom? So it's a set of minimal assumptions to make all apps interoperable. So kind of like a spanning layer in some way. So it's an ontology that can sit above HTTP or Ethereum or Holochain, and provide like a common interface to many different backends using this this ontology or this structure. So I'm careful about going too deep, but I'll just give a little bit about Atom. There's like 3 root axioms that make it possible. There's agents represented by DID, languages, which are the methods of communicating with a given backend, like Holochain or IPFS. And then within these languages, you create expressions, and expressions are resolvable via URL, which points to a language and then a method of a language. And then you have perspectives, which are like RDF triples. They're links where you can link expressions within languages together and start to encode like application logic and application structure. So yeah, advantages for us is that we have a consistent backend, a consistent interface no matter the backend. So if we wanted, for some reason, to switch one of our image store to use IPFS, we can do that without having to change our UI code. We just build a language, and then our actual Flux application doesn't have to change. We just call a different language. Yeah, we benefit from the Atom community, which is obviously still up and coming, but with language creation. So if we make some, other people can use it, and vice versa. And then interoperation, like you have one Atom installation, and this can be used by many different applications, and then you have this kind of one database or dataset or interface for all of your applications. Okay, so now segueing onto the DNA structure, each community is its own DHT. So we have a social context DNA, which gets templated, or a UID gets injected into it. And then we have a unique network. And then each channel, so this is the overall community, and then we have inside there the channels. Each channel is the same DNA, but again, just templated again to be a unique network and linked from the source community. Yeah, the only thing these DNAs store is links. They don't store any actual data. They just store the links to expressions. So the links to other entries in another DNA. So DNAs also support signaling. So this is how we do live messaging. Is that's sent via signal. So people get it real time. And yeah, that's mostly it for a high level overview of the social context. There's more stuff around membrane rules and that kind of thing, which is quite interesting. I think out of the scope of this, but if you want to go deeper into that, then definitely join our Discord or start a discussion. A quick example of the kind of links we store. Again, subject, predicate, object. So neighborhood has member and then points to a DID. This is how we can start to encode members and messages and channels and that kind of thing. And then an example of the kind of query we can make: link query with subject this, predicate has member, limit 1, and if we had these links above in the social context, it would return this link. So that's how you can, this social context is almost like a general database of sorts. It's kind of low level. That doesn't really have such an application interface as much as it's just a general database. Yeah, I mentioned before the links are pointing to expressions, which again are in their own DNAs, their own networks, and inside there is where we actually store the text messages. So on here, we would have links to entries in the expression DNAs, and then these get resolved to the actual text themselves or the actual profile data. Yeah, that's mostly it for a high-level overview. We're trying to hire at the moment, so yeah, please help us. Join our Discord and get involved. It's been good fun. We're on the start of a journey, and yeah, feel free to join.
Great, thank you, Josh. So we are done with big presentations. Next, Hedayat, are you still here? I cannot see you. Yeah, I can see you. Are you ready to talk about Holochain-in-action?
I hope everybody's back, yes? So it is not really a big topic. It is just announcing you that mostly Holochain-in-action is a self-explanatory. If you've seen one of those video, you got the point what's happening. But in brief, so in Holochain-in-action, mainly we would like to have a always ready and open window for the people who would like to architect or design and pair programming, and so in a kind of safe and calm space, so that our community can have a good space for those kind of topics. All in all, it is all about the Holochain-in-action. Mostly the resources that we have, that they are highly knowledgeable about the Holochain architect, a little bit more or less also other topics. So it might be a little bit hard for you to reach them out to receive their support. So it is the space you can come and you can receive those kind of support. That's it. It is generally Holochain-in-action space. It has a membrane because we need to have a quiet, calm, and nice space, so to remove any other extra topic. And mainly we are talking about the architect, design, pair programming, like last time you saw. So I just wanted to invite you, if you would like to continue your journey in the Holochain ecosystem. So if you would like to participate, warm welcome. So we do pair programming. We are ready to support you if you want to design any application, but it is kind of hard for you. You need to receive some support, technical, architect, warm welcome, join. And also, from the beginning of the Holochain-in-action, I started implementing peer share. Peer share, we already have a file storage module, or actually, yeah, DNA we can attach as a building block, but the peer share is more than this one. So right now it is idle for me because I'm busy with other stuff. If you would like to participate, even you don't know where to start or what to do, peer share is there that you can join and do a pair programming testing the building block, and also come to the Holochain-in-action and share with others in the peer-to-peer or pair programming or whatever you would like. That's it. It is not a really big topic. I would like to invite you if you would like. So contact me. So, and if you have some idea for yourself, warm welcome. If you would like to participate, you don't know, I offer peer share. Again, contact me that I can talk to you how you can participate. That's it. It is all about the Holochain-in-action. Thank you. If you have any question, warm welcome.
I have to add that we have such a great time. And there are some sessions in like, I remember 3 weeks ago, it was like every session is great, but 3 weeks ago we pull out Acorn and we started mapping modules with each other, and it was like, whoa, okay, Holochain is working in action, in Holochain-in-action. It was like we have a lot of fun. So yeah.
All right, Thomas, are you ready to go next?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas, and I just have a little, this is a kind of a last minute thing I wanted to share, because I wanted to see if I can find people interested in the avenues I'm exploring. So we've had some interesting talks, and there's a lot of people in the space working on tools for Holochain, and I'm looking now at this lens here you can see, which is about these spheres of where I see tools being made. So we have people making reputation stuff, the neighborhoods cities doing, sense making, knowledge management. And my interest was in identity management because this is like a core part of Holochain for me. And trying to understand how these components will work together was of interest to me. So I started to look at the architecture of doing identity in Holochain and this prior work on personas and profiles. And really it's about we're entering this paradigm where you're keeping all your data and your things you do in your life on your devices. And so we already have this situation where people are keeping their Bitcoin wallets or their Ethereum wallets, and they're managing these things on the devices. And so we come into this thing where you're no longer in this where the data is on some centralized server, but you're managing your data. And so yeah, it's about having a private network of your devices, and then having your personas, which are your kind of identities in different contexts. And so you create profiles for your apps, and those profiles are subsets of your personas. This graphic may help you to see that. So this is work that other people have been doing on Holochain, and I'm trying to sort of see how I can help contribute to this. So then I came up with this this diagram here, which is quite maybe a bit overwhelming. Let's try to put everything in, but this is I've loosely termed this is the term, this Lifesource, as the app I've been working on, and most of it is just architecture and design. There's a little bit of code, but to explain it, I want basically if you think of people creating many different Holochain apps, and then how would you first of all, you want to expose your identity. So we have this identity cells, and you want to be able to control how much information you share with those apps and the level of sharing. So if you want it's public, or if you want it to be your source chain, so the apps read from your source chain, so your data is not on a public DHT. And then you have an interface for identity management. And then I introduced this concept of the mediator cell, which is a way for inter-app communication. So you're communicating between apps inside the Holochain conductor. And the idea is to have like a schema contract, which sort of, this would be like something like a way for all the apps to recognize how to communicate with your identity management app. So then yeah, there's other parts of this. It's like deep key, which was mentioned before. This is also sort of work in progress in Holochain, but it's interesting to see how all these parts will fit together. I have this other concept what I call a life cell. So this is what I was thinking was you would aggregate data into this life cell. Imagine you can reference data in your installed apps, but maybe you want to aggregate that data into a specific place so you can manage all of the data that you've aggregated from those apps in one place. I'm kind of playing with these ideas, but I have a situation where I'm looking at my hard disk and I have all this information. I'd like to kind of visualize it and categorize things to sort of kind of manage my life. I'm sure other people have that experience. Yeah, I think that's really, I don't know if I don't want to go too much over time, but
I guess it's time for us to say goodbye. I just want to say that, well, I've been organizing this DevCamp trying to lead the team, but there has been an overwhelming support from everybody working on this. And it's just been a great honor for me to do this all with all the people that have helped me. So like, this is a huge team effort, and thank you all for doing this. Yeah, this was awesome.
Thank you, Nastasia. And thank you all.
I was saying goodbye, yeah? I mean, if anyone wants to say something after me, like, please go on.
I mean, I want to just say a huge thanks to Nastasia, who has really, really led the project and held it and put in a huge effort. And one thing that has been really wonderful to see from the sidelines for me is just how beautifully the team worked together and how supportive the organizing team was for this project. And like, it just felt like people were taking care of each other, and like, it's rare to see a group of people like work together so well for such a long period of time. And it's easy when it's going well to not recognize like, oh, it's going really well, because it's like you take it for granted, but like, wow, it was really cool to see. Yeah, so I just want to thank you all and celebrate that. And thanks everyone for coming.
Yes, thank you. We love you and hope to see you later. Please just come with your love, with your heart, and we will be waiting for you. Stay connected, and we love you. Yes. Hope to see you again.